Welcome to the Loft Literary Center and Open Book. My name is Bao Phi, Program Director. Though I've been at the Loft for 14 years, this is my first year as Acting Program Director, and this is my first year being in charge of the Emerging Writers Grant. This is only the second time I've given this info session, so we'll all be kind of learning as we go along here. And come in. Also, filming is the illustrious marketing director of the Loft Literary Center, Chris Jones. He'll mostly be here chilling and answer questions about Submittable, which is the online portion of the application. So, very briefly, what is the Minnesota Emerging Writers Grant? It is a grant that provides writers financial support and professional assistance to develop and implement multifaceted plans to help them with their artistic endeavors. There's a pot of $38,000. You can apply for up to $10,000, but you don't have to apply for the max. Typically, every year, between 4 and 5 writers are awarded grants, okay? To be eligible, you must be a resident of Minnesota for at least 1 year. There are no minimum publication requirements. So if you've never been published anywhere, it's fine. You can still apply. Okay? This grant supports the work of creative artists in spoken word poetry, children's books, fiction, and creative nonfiction, but not journalism, screenplays, scripts, or business writing. Okay? You must be in the early stage of your career. You can't have published more than 2 books, all right? Now, work for hire or non-creative works are not considered publications and won't be counted against you in the limit in this regard. If you've been an editor of an anthology, that also doesn't count against you in the 2-book maximum, okay? Also, self-published books that you give to family and friends don't count. They count, but not towards they count to someone, but they don't count against you in this grant. However, self-published books that you've sold online or sold publicly do count, okay? The Jerome Foundation, that is one of the major foundations that supports this grant, defines emerging as professional artists who are the principal creators of new work, and who take risks and embrace challenges, whose developing voices reveal significant potential, who are rigorous in their approach to creation and production, who have some evidence of professional achievement, but not a substantial record of accomplishment. Okay, so what that kind of means is they want to know that you're an artist and you take it seriously, but you're not Billy Collins, in terms of your status, okay, and where you are in your career. Also defined emerging as who are not recognized as established artists by other artists, curators, producers, critics, and arts administrators, okay? In terms of judging, the way that judging works is we always convene, because this is a Minnesota Writers Grant, we always work with another writing organization outside of Minnesota in order to try to get, for it to be fair. And we always collaborate with a different organization. This year it will be Richard Hugo House in Seattle. We will be working with them. They will select 5 judges for the panelists, or 5 judges for the panel, and these 5 judges will read all the applications. We are asking that the judges, as always, be open to all different forms of writing that we're looking for, and we'll also, of course, be asking for racial, gender, class, aesthetic diversity, okay? Reviewers will consider things such as clarity, benefit to the writer's development, feasibility of the project, originality, and artistic merit. Every reviewer will be asked to make comments on each application reviewed. And from there, the top ranking proposals will be discussed in a 2-day review process, which I will attend and take notes on. Now, for the projects themselves, Ineligible projects include tuition for a degree granting program. So you can't say, I want to go get my MFA and I'm going to apply for this to pay my tuition, okay? You cannot apply for this to pay off a debt you already accrued. So I bought this really awesome plasma screen TV. I need to pay it off. And you can't apply for, I wish we could. And you can't apply for this to start up a business, okay? Things that are eligible. Things that are eligible. Tuition for creative classes at a center like the Loft. Or any summer writing conference that's not tuition, like that's not an official degree granting institution. Going to an arts residency. Hiring an editor or a publicist. Paying for a manuscript, critique, or consultant. A work release. Now, a work release may be taking an unpaid leave of absence from work in order to have time to write and work on your stuff. Requesting funds that would match your salary or could be funds used for things like rent, utilities, groceries, childcare, etc. while you're not working. You can also request funds for purchasing a new computer or to develop an author website. You can also apply to travel for research. So let's say you want to write a book and the main character is a person who really digs redwood forests. You can apply to go visit the redwood forest and live out there for a couple weeks and see what it's like, okay? I made that up on the fly, you like that? Okay, the application itself. Did everybody get one of these handouts about what's the difference between a strong narrative, a research budget? I'm sorry? Yep, there are more up there. So the different parts of the proposal are as follows. First, a strong narrative proposal of 1 to 5 pages. So the narrative proposal is who you are, what you're doing, where you hope what opportunities, how is this going to make you a better writer, okay? How is this going to be good for your professional development? Next, a researched project budget. And again, you could take a look at the sheet here, research budget. We want to see that you've done a little bit of research, okay? So if, for instance, you're planning on going to Seattle, look up what a flight between here and Seattle is. Now, we recognize that prices change. We just want a ballpark, okay? We understand that. Just so we kind of know that you're not applying this because you're like, oh, Canada sounds nice, and you put down $2,000, okay? So do a little bit of research. And in terms of, let's backtrack a little bit to the narrative. Be as specific as you can. There's an example here for a strong narrative. A weak narrative would be, I will attend a writer's conference to receive a critique of my short story. That's not telling us anything, okay? A stronger example is I plan to attend the Napa Valley Writers Conference to study with fiction writer Michael Byers. His success at both the novel, Long for This World, and the short story, The Coast of Good Intentions, will prove beneficial to me as I continue to work on my novel while crafting short stories for publication. The issues in his work reflect those I am attempting to illuminate in my own fiction. Okay? So give us a sense of why this is important. The next part of the proposal is a work sample, and I'll just go over that very briefly. For prose, and all of this information is on the website, on the Loft website, so don't feel like you have to memorize all of this. So I'll just go through it very briefly. For prose, it's 20 to 30 double-spaced pages or 15 to 20 typeset. Poetry is 15 to 20 single-spaced pages. Spoken word artists, you can submit digital audio or video file. And writers of picture books may submit up to 25 pages of text and art. Now again, for picture books, that's a lot. You don't have to submit that much, but you can submit up to that much, okay? And then the next part of the application is a brief biographical statement. Now the biographical statement is going to be basically what the Loft uses to let the world know when and if you win, okay? And then an artistic resume of up to 2 pages. Now, for the artistic resume, the CV, you're not applying for a job. So you don't have to give us a 7-pager, about everything that you've ever done. Basically, with your CV, you just want to kind of give us a sense of like how long you've taken writing seriously, maybe some workshops that you've done, maybe some mentorships that you've worked on, maybe like people that you've submitted to or something. It's not necessarily everything about you, okay? Backtracking a little bit, with your work sample, tie your work sample to your proposal, okay? So if your proposal is saying you want to go and look at the redwoods, for instance, for a character, then show some work that you've done towards that goal, okay? All right. And then the last part is supporting materials. And supporting materials can include things like notes, emails, or official letters from mentors or organizations that have agreed to work with you or that you talked about the possibility of working with them. So for example, again, going back to the redwood example, let's say you've talked to someone in California and they have a writing organization that specializes in nature writing, and you've talked to them and they said, absolutely, if you get this money, you can definitely come here for a week and work with us. So the optional materials are things like that where you can kind of show that people are ready to work with you if you just have the opportunity for that. Similarly, if there's a mentor that you've always wanted to work with, but you just haven't had enough time or money to ask them to be your consultant, supplemental materials would be a letter from that person saying, I would love to do that, we've talked about it, if this person gets the money, I'm ready to do it, okay? But that's optional, okay? So that is the very quick bullet points of the grant. And I can tell you the projects that won last year, if that would be helpful to you all. I'll keep their names out of it, but I'll tell you what their proposals were. One artist was awarded a full grant of $8,600 to support trips to Center for Research Libraries in Chicago to do accurate readings of Nigerian religious and cultural climate for her novel. Okay, so that was one winning project. There was another person who won $9,000 to reduce her work time by 20% over the course of an entire year in order to focus 1 day a week on the completion of her memoir. Okay, so that's another winning project. Another writer was awarded a grant of $2,300 to obtain an in-depth manuscript critique from author Kelly Barnhill. So Kelly Barnhill is a local children's writer. Also to rent a writer studio for 6 months and provide 1 week of childcare while she was on a self-designed writing retreat. Okay. Another writer was awarded $6,000 to provide focused time to revise and expand her poetry manuscript and prepare it for submitting to publishing contests. And yet another writer was awarded a partial grant of $7,100 to recreate and broaden Twin Cities Ring Ring poetry installation. This was a series placing poems by her and other Minnesota poets using phone technology at unique sites in Greater Minnesota for summer of 2014. Funds would support travel to installation sites in Greater Minnesota, recording equipment, software, and promotional expenses. And the last project that won was a $5,000 partial grant to reduce her course load during the academic year to focus time on her novel in progress. Okay, So again, that was just last year's winners, but I think that kind of gives you a pretty good view of the possibilities of things that you can apply for, okay? And I think one thing that I'll just say before we do Q&A is that my advice to folks is any of you who have applied for a grant before or have also sat on a judging panel know that we receive a tremendous amount of interest for this. We receive up to about 250 applications for this. So imagine that you're one of these panelists who has to read through 250 applications. My advice to you is to put your strongest stuff forward, to pay attention to the first paragraph of your narrative proposal, and to show that you've done a little bit of research and put some thought into what you would do if you would receive this grant. Okay?